As I'm sure a lot of you are very excited to get their hands on the latest release in the Final Fantasy universe, there may be some skeptics holding out. If you are someone who is unsure of pulling that trigger and actually buying Final Fantasy 15, well, I've sorta kinda put together a list of features and aspects that should maybe help clear up your decision to play the game instead of skip it. I mean, with every new Final Fantasy there is that comes within the series, we get a whole slew of new innovative features, and this one is just that. Have you already made up your mind, and have you decided if you're going to purchase the game? Well, let me know what you are looking forward to the most about this title. Alright, enough of the nonsense, let's just get right into it. With Final Fantasy 15 coming out, there's going to be around 200 hours of gameplay from what the developers are saying. I believe there's about 40 to 50 hours of the story to play, which means the main story is going to give you a good amount of time, and that's about pretty much 2 days of gameplay to have a whole lot of fun with. On top of that, there's going to be around 100 hours of other things to do throughout the game, so that's side missions, mini puzzles, and exploring. So there's obviously a lot of content, there's not a lack of content. So if there's one thing that you are looking for, a game that's trying to hold you in for a longer amount of time, then this can easily do that, and it's definitely going to hold you, grasping you by every second of the story. As I mentioned earlier, Final Fantasy has an onslaught of new innovations, and their combat is definitely one of the highlights of it, where they're taking a step away from the turn-based combat system that they usually idolized in the past, and instead try to keep it seamless with the rest of the game. It's action-packed, and it allows for combos between the 4 different party members, and on top of that, you're still able to communicate with the other members of the party so that you can strategize with the team and do some cool combos by just utilizing the D-pad. Although you're only able to control Noctis while you're in combat, you're still able to chain together some pretty cool combos with the other 3 members. Now you may be wondering, you may be a little bit curious to how the weapon slots work within the game. Well, you get 4 slots to equip either weapons, magic, or shields. And if I had to suggest anything, it would be to try to keep your party varied through the different options. Also, I should mention that there is an option for those who want to keep the pace of the combat a little bit slower by turning on the wait mode. So it's kind of just another option for those who want to keep the combat familiar for fans of the past games. A world that is predicted to be somewhere around 780 square miles in sheer size, which is said, if you compare it to Witcher 3, is a couple times larger than that game world. It may be large, but it doesn't only have quantity behind it. It has an in-depth environment design, meaning if you're trying to explore, chances are you're probably going to lead to some interesting secret finds. It is also a ridiculously beautiful game, and I'm sure a lot of people can see that. Combining both great level design and its appearance should make you feel immersed throughout the game world. Final Fantasy will also have tons of NPCs throughout cities, so you're not really going to get like this empty-like feeling when you're traveling throughout the world. From what had originally been Final Fantasy Versus 13, we have come a very long time, 10 years in the making, to it finally making a release. Back in 2006 at E3, when Square Enix decided to tease fans about Final Fantasy Versus 13, everyone genuinely seemed very excited. Although through the years, many have doubted Square Enix's development, it's finally here and we're gonna get to play it. And honestly, if there's a franchise that can make you wait 10 years, my choice would probably go to Final Fantasy in the hopes of getting a great game in the making. From 2006's E3 to now, towards the end of 2016, we have grown and aged a fair amount, but we can finally be satisfied to get our hands on the damn game. Recently, we have seen Final Fantasy do some gaming and media crossovers. Typically, large AAA titles do some media crossovers in order to help promote itself, but Final Fantasy kind of took it a step up and did a crossover with another gaming series. Although this one is not within the game world of Final Fantasy, it is a tie-in with Nier Automata. The engine blade that you see Noctis use within 15 can be used by Yora within Nier. This is interesting because it could possibly open up some doors down the road for future crossovers between the 2 series and possibly some other series, and hopefully one where Final Fantasy actually receives something in game. So if you are a fan of Nier, you're gonna get some little bit of a Final Fantasy spice when you play a game with Yora with the engine blade. With Final Fantasy 15 having such large and vast environments throughout the world, you're going to need to transport somehow very easily. Doing so can be done in and out of combat through different types of mediums, a couple of them. Now within combat, you do have a warp leaping ability so that you can close in the gaps against your enemies or try and hop out of combat quicker. Now out of that and outside of combat, you're going to have a couple of other mediums. One of them being the big one, the Chocobos, but on top of it, we see the car. The car that does start off the story and that leads a lot of the story throughout the game does eventually get upgraded so that it's a possibility to fly the car throughout the world. And it's gonna be needed because, like I said, there's about 780 square miles of land to kind of explore throughout this world, so you're definitely gonna be able to need to do it in a faster route, which is flying. Final Fantasy 15 has 5 pretty main characters, one being a pretty large heroine who you're not going to see as often, but the 4 main ones who are in your party are pretty different how their perspectives are throughout the game. The big one being Noctis, who is the main character that revolves around the story, and he's the one who you control mostly throughout the combat. Each of the characters throughout the game kind of play with different perspectives and emotions, and they all have different relationships with Noctis. First off, we have Gladiolus. Now he's supposed to be Noctis's bodyguard, but he plays more of like a brother-like role throughout the game. Then we have Ignis, who is more of a role model or an intelligent person who tries to be an advisor for Noctis. They have been friends since they were children. There is also Prompto, who has been friends with Noctis since they were in high school, and he's more of the comedy kind of guy. He's gonna throw out some jokes there for you. He's also the guy who chased a lot of the attacks with Noctis throughout the combat. And last but not least, you have Lady Lunafreya, who is the childhood to Noctis, as well as the fiance. So there's a big story around that. Not gonna get into that, but there's a lot of characters, like I said, different emotions, different perspectives, all switching it up and keeping it fresh throughout the game. As magic usually plays a very big part in Final Fantasy games, the magic within Final Fantasy 15 is bigger and better than ever. Now you're gonna have the ability to summon using astrals, but then there's also the magic that I talked about earlier about the weapons and shields that you're gonna be able to find throughout the environments when you're traveling. There's a couple of basic types, there's 4 basic types of magic in which you're able to customize to your liking further. Now in order to actually get this magic, you're gonna need to draw it out and then transfer it into a flask. It's possible that you can mix 2 different types of magic into it to see what you can create, and on top of that, they're also gonna let you customize it even further to try and draw out even doing more damage while you're in combat. Alright guys, that's gonna do it for me. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this. I'm sure a lot of you are very excited, but I actually decided to make this one as I had a couple of friends say that they were not excited for this game at all, and that they were just gonna skip it and just play some other games, and I was a little skeptical on why they were doing so. So I kind of drew them in and made them bite the bullet finally. But I want to know what you guys are looking forward to about Final Fantasy 15. If you're not, let me know as well why. See you guys in the next one.